editing? Okay, yeah, I'm editing
I'm,
that one.
I'm
That's
creating more problem here.
exciting.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so we are back on the main stage. I hope you guys enjoyed the roundtable. Friends, do whatever you want. So our last session of the day on the main stage is about climate change and social equity, a very hopeful topic. I think we have Don Lippert here, the CEO and founder of Elemental Accelerator. Welcome, Don. And of course, Henk Rogers, who is the founder of Blue Planet Energy, Blue Planet Foundation, Blue Startups, Blue Planet Alliance. I could go on. He's the founder of a lot of things, and climate change is his passion. So this is a fireside chat between Don and Henk. So I am going to exit stage left and let them talk for the next 20 minutes or so. So enjoy the conversation.
All right. You go first, Don.
All right. Thanks so much, Shanoa. It's such a delight to be here at East Meets West this year. So, Henk, I mean, you and I are so passionate about this issue. I'm delighted to get to talk with you about it. Part of climate and working on climate is just being really aware of the clock, right? So we have less than 10 years to solve for climate change before its effects become even more catastrophic and make this planet really difficult to live on for human life and to thrive on. I mean, who would have thought we would have seen Texas under a blanket of snow after what happened with fires and heat last year in California? The extremes are really hurting people in our most vulnerable communities, especially. So in the world of climate action, it seems like things are going so fast, but also sometimes not fast enough. One of your organizations, Blue Planet Foundation, was instrumental in setting the 100% goal by 2045 for Hawaii for clean energy. But we know that that's not really fast enough, that we need to move faster as a society. So I'm just curious if you could riff a little bit on what you're thinking about climate, how you're thinking about speed, and what you think's necessary now for us.
Yeah. So the 2045, we're not going to do this by 2045. We're going to do it much sooner. The 2045 is just what our politicians were ready to give us. We were negotiating. We were trying to get 2040, and the politicians were fighting for 2050, and we settled at 2045. The point is, for me, the concept of 2 degrees temperature or 1.5 degrees, it's not something that an ordinary person can understand or do something about. It's an airy-fairy thing that some scientists understand, but not everybody can understand. So the concept of doing something like achieving 100% renewable energy by some date, that is something that everybody can understand. And as and when we start getting conscious about the magnitude of the problem and the speed at which we need to solve it, the solutions will come much faster. So we didn't just come up with a mandate. We followed it by working with the legislature, by the way, on a different business model for the utility. So they make more money the quicker they switch to renewables. And guess what that did? They came up with an RFP for 800 megawatts of renewable energy. That's half of Hawaii. And so if you just say someday in the future you're going to have to go 100%, and you incentivize them to do it quicker, then they can actually move. And so now the electric company, which used to be, their lobbyists versus my lobbyists in the legislature, now we're on the same side. We're both trying to achieve the same thing. So we say this in Polynesia, that we need to be rowing in the same direction. And as soon as we start rowing in the same direction, then we're no longer at some standstill. We're actually moving. And the quicker we row in the same direction, the quicker we move. So I think that just by saying, like, we're going to do this, your favorite expression about sailing. The sailboat is in the harbor, but it wasn't meant to be. It was made to be in the ocean. What's your favorite sailing experience, and how do you relate that to what we need to achieve in climate change?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, I mean, I love to sail. I guess my favorite sailing experience is probably, what comes to mind is learning to sail in Maine as a kid. My family has been from Maine since the late 1700s, so many generations in the specific lake in Maine. So that's where I learned to sail. And I think what I love about sailing is just being right on the edge, pushing. I learned in small boats, so pushing a boat as fast as you possibly can right on the edge. And I think the sort of idea of a ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are made for. I mean, that's like a Nainoa. I mean, you sail with Nainoa and Hokulea.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a Nainoa thing, right? So it is dangerous to go sailing, but it's more dangerous not to go. It's more dangerous not to try. Yeah. So I think in some ways, I mean, we started funding companies at Elemental, or sort of our predecessor, more than 10 years ago. And at that time especially, it felt, whoa, we're kind of on the edge of this. It's a little risky. It's around the same time you guys started Blue Planet Foundation. A lot of people said, oh, this is sort of a dumb idea, having like an accelerator for climate. Like, this really is only for tech. It's not about climate. It's not about solving these hard problems. We got a lot of that feedback, and we said, well, it's a really important problem. We need to try. We need to iterate. We need to figure out how it can work. So, now we funded 117 startups, and the market is just taking off. Everyone is realizing that this is where giant wealth transfers are going to be. We're seeing, NextEra is a bigger energy company than Exxon. Exxon got kicked out of the Dow Jones. I mean, these are huge, monumental shifts that have happened in the last few years. And so now, while we're definitely still sailing, it feels like it's a regatta. There's a fleet. There's a whole bunch of people sailing alongside us now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. You lived in Seattle as well? Yeah, you went to Lakeside. I actually read your bio. And so my question is, why Hawaii? What brought you to Hawaii?
Yes, I mean, I grew up in Seattle and going to Maine in the summers, but Hawaii is kind of interesting. When I was in school, I actually worked on a Big Island energy project for the Big Island, right? So it was about working with Kohala Center and my grad school, and how do we transform the Big Island to clean energy. And so I kind of caught this bug about, oh, this is a really interesting place to test things out. So not in the sense of like, let's use Hawaii as a lab because it's, we just want to try things, but Hawaii as a canvas for what's possible for the world and as a beacon for that. And so when I went to Washington, D.C. and was working on energy projects all over the world, we actually happened to get the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative as one of our projects at my consulting firm. And they said, oh, you've spent time in Hawaii, you can take this on. So I spent about 3 years commuting back and forth to Hawaii and working on the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, really sort of staffing that with the Department of Energy, the state of Hawaii, this whole vision of how to flip an economy from dirty to clean. So in some ways, I sort of feel like Hawaii, I didn't necessarily choose Hawaii, but Hawaii ended up sort of...
Hawaii chose you.
Coming into my life in this really powerful way. And then I ended up moving out here in 2009 to work for my mentor, Maurice Kaya, who you know well. So I think at the end of the day, it's always about people, right?
Right. Yeah, and the Hawaii model, I'm in the process of taking the Hawaii model and exporting it to other places in the world. So my next foray is the Blue Planet Alliance, and we set up shop across the street from the United Nations to work with other countries. And basically what we want to do is convince them to have a mandate. Once you have a mandate, then everybody in your jurisdiction starts to think about how are we going to achieve that mandate. And first of all, we have the mandate, and then second of all, we help them figure out how to achieve that mandate. But first, have the mandate. Somebody's got to have the cojones, the balls, to have that mandate and say, we're going to do this by whatever date. And 2045, which was given to us by the Hawaii legislators, turns out to be a great date because it's 5 years ahead of 2050, which is when the IPCC would like us to be within 2 degrees. But 2045 is the 100th anniversary of the United Nations. What better date to fix climate change than the 100th anniversary of the United Nations? This is World War III, or as John Kerry says, World War Zero. And first of all, we're working with small island developing states. So we are doing an MOU with the SIDS countries, and we're going to do the mandates in all those countries. Those are the smallest and easiest countries.
How do you do that? I'm just curious. So, I mean, what are the most effective tools you've found to help people get on board with those mandates? I mean, it's a complex policy environment out there. What's working or what's not working even?
Yeah. So well, we have to lead by example, and unfortunately, we managed to get it done in Hawaii, and so Blue Planet Foundation has helped a whole bunch of other states, including California and so on, in this country with the same mandate. And that seems to be going on track. And now with the new administration, hopefully that will speed up. But doing it with other countries, so the 57 SIDS countries, that's over a quarter of the votes in the United Nations. So if some rich country wants to get on the Security Council, they are going to need their votes. And so, hey, you know what, Norway, or you know what, whatever your country is, you want to get on the Security Council, give these countries clean energy, help them with the transformation. And so that's sort of that's the way that I'm trying to explain it to them. There are countries that have already that have already made the mandate. And the problem is that their mandates are too soon. Like they said 2020 and they failed, and now they moved it to 2025. I don't like the idea of not making it and then slipping. I'd rather have a date in the future where everybody agrees, yes, we're definitely going to make that, and then work on making it sooner.
Yeah.
Do you have lightning questions for me? Are we at lightning question time already? I don't know.
I think we can do one or two more questions. If you have any other questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, this is probably a more personal question. How did you guys connect to the Elemental? From being the energy accelerator in Hawaii, now you've got a much bigger role. How did you make that transition? How did that happen?
Yeah, so we were Energy Accelerator in 2017. We became Elemental Accelerator. And as you know, we started in Hawaii. Our roots are in Hawaii. And then, folks were really excited about the work that we were doing and wanting to see how we could expand it much more globally. And that was really our vision from the beginning too. So we partnered with Emerson Collective, which is the investment platform of Laureen Powell Jobs. And we opened our second headquarters and second flagship in the Bay Area. So now Elemental has 2 headquarters, and we're about 35 people on our team across Honolulu and the Bay Area. And really looking for and funding companies from around the world who have great ideas and great traction in solving for climate. So it was in understanding that the climate challenge is partly about energy, but in Hawaii, we understand this, and in islands, you understand this. As soon as you sort of pull on one thread or start looking into one system, it's connected to everything else in the world. And so our energy system is so deeply connected to our food system. We have an amazing local company called FarmLink Hawaii that is a platform to help small farmers find customers, whether it's restaurants or consumers or other customers, and connect farmers to customers, local food. This has a huge climate impact, right? Not importing our food, having local food, having regenerative agriculture, having soil that actually sequesters carbon. So as soon as you start pulling on energy, you come to food and agriculture. You come to water. Water is an incredible emitter, but also source of solutions and, of course, source of life. You come to mobility and how we move around and get to work. You also get to plastics and materials and everything that we call circular economy. So that's how we got from energy to those 5 sectors. And I think what's exciting now is that we're seeing investors and the capital markets also see these sectors as really intertwined. So I recently joined the board of a SPAC, of a special purpose acquisition company. I'm sure folks who are on this call have been sort of seeing the billions and billions of dollars of transaction activity of companies now going public much faster through SPAC vehicles. And it is these kinds of pools of capital in the public markets that have only been accessible to very few companies are now coming into climate. And that's actually really what we need to drive scale on the time frame that we need. So it is a brave new world, even in the last year, on the kind of capital that's available in climate. And it gives me a lot of hope for where we're going to be in the future.
Awesome. I think it's your turn to ask a question.
All right. So let me ask you one of our lightning ones, and you can riff a little bit on it if you want. We have a couple of minutes left. So I'm curious, this has been such a epic year in so many ways. How have you changed most as a leader this year? I'm curious.
Well, I've been able to do like this virtual communication with people. I've met people. I've stayed in contact with people without getting on a plane. So, that is a huge difference. And now that I know how to do that, there's no need for me to get on a plane going forward as often. I'll be going to Glasgow for COP26. I'll be going to, conferences where it's really critical that you actually meet new people. But, I don't need to go somewhere to meet somebody that I already know. So that's, I've lowered my carbon footprint. How about you? How has it changed you?
I think, two things. One is that, our team's been working on equity and inclusion across climate for the last 4 years. And I think this year has also just given us a real opportunity to work on that in our organization and as individuals, and realize that we can't do equity out well, which is what we call sort of working in communities, working in frontline communities, working with populations who have been traditionally excluded or have less access to opportunity, unless we do that really well in our organization. So I think in some ways this year has opened my heart in that way. What advice would you give an entrepreneur listening today, Henk? You've started lots of things. What would you give?
I started. So never give up, first of all, and don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to me. There were so many people when I was getting started in my first business who told me that I was crazy, that I shouldn't do it, and so on and so forth. And basically, I did it anyway. So my advice to you as an entrepreneur is do it anyway. And what's your advice that you would give, Dawn?
I guess my advice I would give any human, but especially entrepreneurs, is surround yourself with people that give you energy and make you better. There's only a certain amount of hours in the day, and you can, time is finite, but energy is not. And I've just found that by surrounding myself with people who are better than me and give me energy, I can achieve way more. And I'm curious too, is you've been in Hawaii for what, almost?
No, I haven't been in Hawaii almost 50 years.
How long have you been in Hawaii?
So I've been 18 years this time, and I went to university, so I was there.
Oh, you went to university, yeah.
If you add it all up, it's 22 years. What has not changed is, what has not changed is that Hawaii kind of we're local. And, when I first came to Hawaii, I was a student, and we were fighting against the war in Vietnam. And when I got to Hawaii, there was nothing going on. It was like the rest of the world didn't exist. It's like the world and the war in Vietnam didn't exist. And so we're an island culture. And so we're a little bit provincial in that. We think about Hawaii first. I think that's a problem with every island. But as more and more people come to Hawaii, I think that's changing. How long have you been in Hawaii?
I've been in Hawaii 11 years now.
11 years.
Almost 12, yeah.
And how about you? Do you feel something that hasn't changed?
I think the thing that hasn't changed is that it's really people and relationship first. And I think that's island culture too, right? Like knowing that ultimately what you do impacts someone else, changes how you work and live and behave. And so that's something I really love about Hawaii and appreciate every time I come back.
Yeah, I love Hawaii. I mean, you know, I will get old and die in Hawaii.
Okay,
All
our
right.
final question, Shanoa. Do we have time for a last one?
I'm coming on to the screen. Sure. You also have some questions from the audience I wanted to tell you.
Oh, okay.
There's a little question button here. So and you have a lot of questions, so you probably don't have time to take them all, but I wanted to point that out.
Oh, yeah.
If you wanted to take on one of those questions with your last few minutes here.
Where do we find them?
I can read.
Texas outages. Will renewables take over? Is everyone going to get off the grid? No, I don't think so. We'll need renewables at scale, but we need much better grid planning. Yeah.
I think the future of energy is distributed energy, and the grid will help some people when they don't have enough, and distribute the energy that's being generated. But it shouldn't be generated centrally, a single point of failure. It should be generated at the end. So the grid will be there, but in the future it won't be the main source. You know, we won't have central energy generation. It'll be all over the place. Next question.
There's one here about climate disaster mitigation if preventative measures aren't enough. Yes, we will absolutely need. I mean, we're already seeing the impacts of climate change right now. This is not a future state that we're talking about. We see it in, the disasters we were just talking about. So certainly we need to be doing resilience and adaptation measures now to avoid suffering, particularly in frontline communities and in communities that at least can afford it. I mean, we will pay for this now or later. It is very expensive to pay for it once we have disasters coming in.
Yeah, so look at what happened in Texas. So basically what happened in Texas is that they were building for conditions that existed in the past, not conditions which will exist in the future. This is not the last cold spell that Texas is going to have. This is not the last forest fire California will have. And we will have a rise in sea level that we have to build against. And so in Hawaii, especially, whenever we build something, we have to build it with the idea, with the concept in mind that there will be a 1 meter or more rise in sea level by the end of the century. So stop thinking like things are going to stay the same. They are not. The beaches that we enjoy now are going to be underwater, and things are going to change, and we have to think about how to build back or build better from now.
Awesome advice, you guys. Thank you very much. We'll wrap it up there, and we will be moving to our conclusion for today. So thank you very much to Don and Henk, and you will hopefully see them around for the next 2 days. I know that Elemental has a big presence here throughout the event, and Henk is hosting a roundtable again on Friday. So you can check him out there on his climate change roundtable. So yes, thanks you guys very much. So that is concluding our first day. Now remember that the lounge is going to stay open, so continue networking. I am going to try something really tricky here, and that is going to be to show you a few slides. Wish me luck as I transition to sharing my screen and hopefully showing you guys a few slides. So we can do some really very important thank yous for today. So I hope that you can see this. So I am, whoops, nope, that didn't work. Okay, never mind. Well, our first
If you can hear me, it worked.
Okay. Huh?
If you can hear me, it worked.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. I can't see anything. That's the funny thing about sharing your slides on here. So,
I think we just see your background, though, maybe not your actual slide.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, wish me luck on that. I will try again tomorrow. And so for now, we're going to conclude to our lounge. And yeah, I hope that you guys can continue networking and have a great time doing that. I will have to figure out what happened here to my screen because I can't see anything now. I've invited tech support in to help me. All right. Well, you guys, we will be concluding the session and go to the social lounge and keep networking. Okay. All right. Thank you, Henk. Thank you, Don. Thank you, everyone, for participating in day 1 of East Meets West 2021.
See you tomorrow, same time, same
All right.
station.
Take care.
My panel's tomorrow,
Bye.
so make sure you're there.
Bye.
All right. Oh, it was all going so well.
You're still on there, Shanoa. End the session.
Yeah, don't say anything nasty.
Yeah. I'm going to end it. I'll end it.
Casey, you'll need to end it. I can't see anything.
Okay. I'm ending it now.